With that being said, we now move on to our second panel of the day, which is exploring the efforts on safeguarding Indonesia's natural resources and biodiversity. I would like to invite our moderator for our second panel of the day, Dr. Jessica Hanafi, the founder and executive director of PT Life Cycle Indonesia, to the stage to introduce our speakers for the insightful discussions.
Today we have 4 panelists in our session. I would like to welcome Pak Irfan Bakhtiar, the Program Director of the Climate and Market Transformation of WWF Indonesia, with more than 20 years of experience working for NGOs and development programs on community-based natural resource management. Pak Irfan directs WWF Indonesia activities on climate and footprint-related programs. Please welcome to the stage, Pak Irfan. And then the second one, I would like to invite Pak Roni Sunyanto Joyo Martono. Thank you. Pak Roni is the Senior Manager of Indices and ESG Business Development at the Indonesia Stock Exchange. He has been with the IDX for over a decade and has served in various roles. And one of the most interesting one, I think, oversees the development and promotion of various stock indices, including those focused on ESG. I would love to hear more on that. Next one is Bu Maya Kamdani. Bu Maya Kamdani is the President Director of PT BNP Paribas Asset Management and provides overall leadership and strategic direction to the Indonesian unit of BNP Paribas Asset Management. Her career spans over 25 years in the financial service industry and investment management in Indonesia and the United States. Last but not least, I will welcome Pak Andika Putrabitama, the head of the Rimba Collective, the study capital. He has over 10 years of experience in public policy and policy advocacy on topics such as corporate climate commitments, sustainable land use and commodities, and sustainable forest management in Southeast Asia. So before we begin to the panel discussions, I'll take my seat over here. We have a Slido questions for everyone here to participate. So I would like you to all to scan that barcode, and there's a question there. The question is, what are the greatest threats to Indonesia's nature and biodiversity? The greatest threats to Indonesia's nature and biodiversity. Maybe Bapak Ibu in the panel, if you like to scan the Slido as well, please do. Susah. Oh, okay. We have it live here. Humans, oligarchy, humans, people behavior, Prabowo, mining, illegal logging, coal and mining. Human here is the big word there. So I think we can see that our behaviors is the threat of our own existence. All right, that's interesting. Humans, greedy capitalism, greed, poverty. Okay, it's quite interesting. Okay, I think from the results we can see how we are the source of our doom. Yeah. We will make this discussion light, Bapak Ibu, and hopefully not too stressed. So don't be too stressed out. Maybe I'm more stressful than you, because we only have such limited time, around 40 minutes allocated for our discussions. There are 4 of you, and then we also have some around 15 to 20 minutes for question and answer. So we'll make it short, but hopefully it will be direct and can be insightful as well. So In this session, actually, our topic is to address the safeguarding Indonesia's natural resource and biodiversity. Yeah, so we want to see how the mechanism, how to mitigate the issues, what are actually the issues in our biodiversity. I think everybody in here is really the actors, the stakeholders. We cannot do this ourselves, basically, so how can we move the needle? So that's the basic idea of our discussion. So as we start, maybe I would like to ask first to Pak Irfan Bakhtiar. Pak Irfan, from your experience, as we know, Indonesia is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and everybody is eager to have their hands on Indonesia over centuries, every time. And in your experience and 20 years of more, why do you think nature and biodiversity is the key to achieving net zero, Pak? And then, what are the latest threats to Indonesia's land and wildlife?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Bu Jessica. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah, if we talk about nature, human, biodiversity, and climate, those four components are very closely related. Human activities, especially economic activities, more especially the extractive activities, will make impact for the nature. Small or big economic activities will make a destruction to the nature. And this situation, the destruction of the nature will impact to the biodiversity. And also, the impact to the nature, for example, if we see the deforestation, perhaps some extent, when this deforestation happen, the carbon emission will happen there. Carbon emission, of course, it is a big driver of the climate change that now have. So actually the role of the nature and biodiversity is very crucial for the net zero emission. Why is that? First is nature is a place to storage the carbon. The best carbon storage is nature. Tropical forest, mangrove, coral reef are the best place to store the carbons. Yes, we have technology carbon storage, but it will not be as massive as that. And if we talk about the biodiversity will help the nature to regenerate themselves. So biodiversity and nature can be separated, yeah, and it is the key. So if we talk about the current challenge or threat of nature and biodiversity, yes, if we see the numbers of deforestation, for example, the deforestation rate of Indonesia is quite decreasing for last couple of years, but in specific area, we can see that the deforestation still happen. And some of threat of deforestation we can mention like mining. When we see in Sulawesi, for example, Sulawesi is they don't have any large forest, but they are unique. Sulawesi is very unique, and now Sulawesi is the center of the nickel mining, and that's why we should be careful on developing the safeguard for the nickel mining. And the other deforestation is still happen. Lately, in our work, yeah, and CSO and others, and also in some newspaper mentioned that the deforestation by the pulp and paper still happen in West Kalimantan, for example. It still happen. And also, we have also heard from the news that there are some unbelievable threat to the biodiversity. We heard on the newspaper that several person poachers caught by the authority, by the police, that they confess that they have already killed 26 rhinos. We only have less than 70 in 2021, and 26 of it have been killed. And we also heard about the elephant that died because of the pakar listrik, electric fence. It still happened. There's some of the big threat there. The other is, we can see that the infrastructure development is also can be potentially become a threat. Infrastructure development, we see IKN. Yes, IKN is not developed in the rainforest. It is a plantation area, but around IKN, when we see the infrastructure, it will grow up. We have to be careful. It's not happened yet, but we have to be careful when we move the capital to IKN, the infrastructure development, road and other big infrastructure around the IKN will become new challenge to the nature and biodiversity.
Very interesting, Pak Irfan. Also, when you mentioned about the nickel mining, I'm sorry, when you talk about nickel mining is developed, I think, for the EV,
Yes.
which we hope to solve one of the great issue as well for us. And on the other hand, it's actually also damaging. How would you see the balance of the development and also the biodiversity? How can we make it like, okay, we can still make it, development, but we can also still manage our biodiversity to make sure the ecosystem, the actual ecosystem, the natural ecosystem can still move and scalable in a way. How can we, work together?
We are not a group of anti-development. So what we are now developing in our organization is we try to promote the biodiversity safeguard for all infrastructure development and others. So the biodiversity safeguard is important. We have to map out, we have to understand the high conservation value area and identify on our term, we call it go and no go area for mining, for plantation, for infrastructure, to avoid the, because our tropical forest, for example, is not that much left. If I'm not mistaken, it's less than 60 million hectares left. Mas Andika maybe know also the numbers. Yeah. It's not that big. So from that only small numbers, let's keep it there. So we have to identify which one is high conservation value. Don't disturb it.
Yes.
Do it in other. We still have a large area.
Thank you, Pak Irfan. I would like to follow up this question as well to Pak Andika. Speaking of that, how, as nature-based solutions, I would say how we go hand in hand between the nature, the conservation, and also development. It can support biodiversity. Can you share what is actually the potential market demand for nature-based solutions? Because nowadays we hear many people talking about nature-based, TNFD, those kind of things. Do you reckon we are Indonesia suitable for that? And what is the market demand? Is there any real tangible potentials that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Mas Irfan and the questions on the slide are really piqued an interest of when you're asking about what's the biggest threat for nature. I think one of the underlying roots is that we're not valuing nature as it should, right? When forests, previously when we have no payment for ecosystem services, when there's no market mechanism to value nature as it should, forest is much more valuable when we locked it. Nature is much more valuable when we extract that. But when we put the right valuations of the ecosystem services that nature provides, then it becomes a lot more, or at least there's an economic interest to preserve the natures, including the forest, the mangroves, the peatland. And so I guess as a background to the answers to the questions that you ask, Lestari Capital is a company that specializes in natural capital assets management. So we work with clients who have goals to invest on nature-based solutions. And that's why our conversations with the clients, with some of the companies that we work with, we're trying to identify what is the business case for them to put their money into nature capital assets, right? And I think one of the biggest driver is essentially the plethora of new regulatory framework that is happening in the US and the EU that drives this company to first de-risk their supply chain for exposure on nature degradations, but also they are now much more exposed to any litigations risk and regulatory risk. You mentioned TNFD, right? So there's a whole alphabet soup that TNFD, the Task Force on Nature Financial Related Disclosure. We have TCFD, the climate-related financial disclosures, and then the EU now have the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSDDD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And so all of these new regulations requires company to basically disclose any material impact that their operations would have on the nature. And by disclosing all of this material risk, they are now in a very exposed position to be, sued or campaign against, and that really affects their businesses, right? And not only the business, but the board and the management of the company is now also exposed to that, right? One of the key pillars on the CSDDD is the board's and the management's awareness of the impact, material impact of their operations. And so with this, there's now suddenly a huge demand for this company to de-risk their supply chain, but also there's going to be a demand for what is called as remediation. Because under CSDDD, there's a clause where the company needs to remediate any material impact on nature that they've caused. And if they have to look for area where they can remediate or reduce the risk, of course it will be in a region such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, where they source most of their raw commodities, right? And we've been seeing this trend in the past 5 years that most of the global companies that we talk with, they have an explicit target on nature and no longer only limited to climate, right? I guess in the past decades, there's been a surge of interest on carbon and climate-related goals, but recently there's a new interest on nature-related metrics. We're seeing companies like Unilever, for example, they have an explicit commitment to restore 150 million hectares of forest across the globe. Walmart, they have a explicit commitment to protect and restore 50 million acres of forest across their supply chains. And so now all of these commitment metrics have translated into a much more explicit nature indicators, biodiversity indicators, and I think this is a huge demand that Indonesia and other countries with huge biodiversity potential to capture that. So I guess as a starter, I'll stop there.
Thank you. You answered and then provides me a keyword that is very interesting, because when we speak about nature, we immediately think about conservation. But you mentioned about ecosystem services, which is very interesting, and I think many of us maybe don't know or not sure about what is ecosystem services. Maybe if you can just like a very, very short explanation without people thinking like, oh, nature, okay, I have to conserve the forest, but this is different, totally different ecosystem services. Please share.
No,
Just
sure, yeah.
short.
Ecosystem services, essentially services provided by the nature, right, by the ecosystem, which we usually take for granted, right? Forests, for example, it provides a service to regulate the climate because they absorb the carbon. They also provide service to regulate, for example, soil erosions so that, it prevents landslides, etc. It also provides a home to huge amount of biodiversity, which in this case could also be beneficial for example, biomedical industry who would use the genetic materials of all of these rare exotic plants. And so when it is lost, then the services that the nature provide is also lost, right? And so this is why it's called services. It's actually jasa that they provided. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak. Okay, looking at that, maybe Pak Roni from IDX, can you share Pak how IDX has been advocating for sustainable finance and whether Indonesia is already, moving towards this nature ways, and how is the appetite of the Indonesian investors for companies to operate sustainably? I have many questions from people, actually from the peers, yeah, Pak. Like, okay, we've done ESG, maybe we want to try to be one of the front runners, let's say, but does it translate to our stock prices, for example? How do you see that? But maybe you can answer for how do you see the trend or appetite for the Indonesian investors?
Okay, so thank you for the questions. So happy to share that with you, Dr. Jessica, and to everybody here in the audience. So as a stock exchange, we are committed to promoting sustainable investment in the capital market, especially the Indonesian capital market. We look at it from two sides of the story. We look at it from the supply side and also from the demand side. From the demand side, we are starting to see that investors are becoming more aware and concerned on the ESG issues and sustainability when it comes to investing. They require and demanding more ESG integration in their investing. So this is one of the areas that we want to try to accommodate and facilitate in our capital market. So, and from the supply side, we have a few initiatives that we have already done at the IDX through policies, regulation, products and services. And I can name a few probably. Currently we have 5 stock indices, which is geared towards more ESG investing, such as the ESG Leaders Index and also the Sri Kehati Index, just to name a couple as an example. ESG Leaders Index is an index that consists of 30 of the top companies with top ESG scores, which is implemented by Sustainalytics. We partner with Sustainalytics in this case. And also Sri Kehati is the first ESG index that we have at the stock exchange. So this is it was launched in 2009, so it's one of the oldest. And the Sri Kehati was aimed at encouraging investors to start investing responsibly. So hopefully with these type of indexes, we can attract more capital inflow into ESG investing and also probably attract asset managers, also investment managers to create investment products like ETFs, mutual funds, which are geared towards more ESG integration and sustainability. And also another initiative, we have implemented the regulation for sustainability reporting. We require our listed companies to report their sustainability reporting annually to align with the OJK regulation. This will also help the transparency and data quality that the investors needed in the market to make an informed decision when it comes to measure the sustainability or ESG performance of the company. And thirdly, I think we can also share that IDX also provide an incentive for green bond listing at IDX. This is also to align with the OJK regulation on green bond issuance. So hopefully with this incentive, it would make it easier and cheaper for corporation or asset companies that wants to seek funding from green bond instruments. Other than that, we collaborate intensively with many organizations, exchanges around the globe. We're a member of the Sustainable Stock Exchange. It's a platform for all exchanges to exchange ideas on how exchanges can be more sustainable and how we can set the best practices to promoting sustainable investment in the capital market. And we're also part of the ASEAN exchanges, stock exchanges. We have published our first ASEAN Common Core ESG metrics, which will be implemented by all exchanges across the ASEAN market, which serve as a baseline for ESG reporting by listed issuers. So maybe, hopefully, in the future, from these initiatives, we can help, safeguarding the nature and biodiversity as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak. Now, looking at, just following up on your response, maybe Bu Maya can also share, with your experience, how you as the asset managers, what are the, you play key roles in this responsible investment. Can you share your experience on that, and then, what is the appetite, and to see whether you are interested in investing in the nature-based solution or biodiversity and so on. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question by Jessica. And thank you for inviting BNP Paribas Asset Management. So BNP Paribas Asset Management is actually the asset management arm of the BNP Paribas Group. We are based in Paris and currently manage about 560 billion euro as of March. And out of that 560 billion euro, 66% are portfolios that have embedded ESG into the investment process. So be it integrating ESG parameters or have some sustainability themes. So that's in Europe. So we've started it out back in 2002 when we first launched our socially responsible investment fund. In Indonesia, we also tried to bring sustainability theme to Indonesia. So we started out in 2016. We've been here in Indonesia since 1992, but our ESG rollout started in 2016 because we thought that the market was not that ready then. So we started with a very simple product, what we call sustainability responsible investment, and we combine it with Sharia principles. So this is the berbasis efek luar negeri, Pak. Yeah. So we combine Sharia and SRI principles because we thought they are very similar in terms of value and also principles. But we invest into offshore markets because the universe is much more wider. But it's also a way for us to test the market, how ready the Indonesian investors are. And it was quite a challenge, I would say, because Sharia was also new at that time. But we got the help because of the large Muslim population, so they understand the principle. And then we added on that SRI principle also because it's value-based. In that SRI, we also have some ESG parameters, which is partly also the consideration on environmental values. It's already in there as well. So that's in 2016, our tried out. In 2018, we utilized the SRI Kehati Index, Pak. So thank you for the index. So we utilized the SRI Kehati Index. We built an index fund. And through that index fund, we try to educate investors about contributing to social environment. So with the SRI Kehati embedded in the fund, we are able to donate some social contributions, and in particular to support the sorghum farmers. So that's in a way also supporting the ecosystem as well. Now this time it was actually easier compared to the first one, because I think investors feel that it's closer to them. They can really see the impact because they can see the people farming the sorghum. But if we talk about SRI and ESG, it's just way beyond their heads. Yeah, so that's our second experience, which was much better. And then we also try out in 2023. We launched our first ESG fund that invests into the local Indonesian stocks. So through this fund, we try to embed all the ESG parameters and ESG standards that we apply at BNP Paribas Asset Management globally. That was also the trial. But we understand because ESG is something that people may not be accustomed to, and ESG is also a journey. Sustainability is a journey. And in order for them to invest, they need to know that they have something that they can achieve. And so through that fund, we also try to promote what we call ESG score and carbon footprint, which becomes the objective of our fund managers and also the objective of the fund. So the fund manager now has a mandate to be able to deliver ESG scores that is better than the benchmark and a carbon footprint that is lower than the benchmark. So yeah, so that's part of our education process to the market, but it takes time. Yeah, I mean it's a learning process for everyone.
So I guess people really want to see a tangible results, yeah, real results, and maybe to give an idea, maybe Pak Irfan can share, Pak, in your view, yeah, in your vision, yeah, Pak. What is the future for Indonesia's biodiversity and natural resources? So probably you can give some ideas for the investors. What would be good? Can we measure it? Maybe some. Maybe you can share those visions.
Yeah. In our work now, we try to place the nature and biodiversity. And how to make the nature and biodiversity, seeing the nature and biodiversity from different lens. Nature and biodiversity, we try to work with other stakeholders to see that nature and biodiversity is an asset for our future. Contribution for nature and biodiversity is not a philanthropic action. It is an investment to save our future. That's why currently we are working closely with the Bank of Indonesia and 15 financial institutions that call IKPI, Inisiatif Keuangan Berkelanjutan Indonesia. We are working to promote the sustainable businesses, sustainable investment, sustainable banking. And then the response from the bank and financial institution is very impressive. Several months ago, we conduct a training with OJK on the carbon accounting, for example, for GHG emission, scope 1, scope 2. Almost all of the national bank in Indonesia would like to participate on that training, and we hope that it is still long term. The sustainability and conservation is not a short term gain. So yeah, but we see that it is a good step. And the other thing that we now are trying to see as a next future plan for the conservation for the nature and biodiversity, Pak Andika already mentioned about, you also mentioned about nature-based solution. And how to see the nature-based solution as a bankable nature solution. That's something that we are now trying to develop.
Yeah.
We're trying to develop conservation project as a business, as a bankable project.
Yeah.
Globally, in WWF, have a program called, we working with the Dutch government. We have the scheme called DFCD, Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, that providing financing facilities for the nature-based solution project. We are now, even we are not bank, but we are now trying to seek the project that can be funded by those facilities in the blended finance. That's a grant for the preparation and then loan for the project itself.
Yeah.
And we have also now in global also we have a global Islamic finance program that working from the with the source of IDB and others from the Islamic countries to see the same opportunities. Islamic finance for climate and development. That's now that we're trying to develop. So in the future, we see that the biodiversity conservation, nature conservation should be an investment, should be a project that more sustainable. That's the main thing.
Of course, measurable as well, yeah, Pak.
Yes, of course. Investment should be measurable.
Looking at that, Pak Andika, what do you reckon the kinds of policy changes that needed, or since you have experience in policy advocacy, what kind of policy that can help to push or support this transition? Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I see that Indonesia is one of the more advanced country, at least in Southeast Asia, that I've observed, that already have sets of policy as well as directions from its government. We know for sure that the carbon regulations is now shaping up. There's a lot of investment to go to carbons. But a couple of weeks ago, actually, the Bappenas, the planning agency, conducted a workshop to look at what are the bioeconomy potentials other than carbon. And so the government have already thinking, so we have the carbon regulation set, but what else can we capitalize on the natures? And it sets out a different path that the term is nature narrative claims. So if you're buying one credits of carbons, right? What you're buying is the carbon units. But for nature claims, essentially what is happening is that some of these global companies wants to put dollar amount on 1 hectares of forest, and what they want is essentially just claiming that my money have contributed to the conservation and restorations of X number of hectares in this jurisdiction. Malaysia have done their groundwork in providing a pathway for what they call as a forest conservation certificate. So this is not carbon, but the unit is hectares of conservations. Indonesia is, I think, looking into that pathway as well. At least Bappenas is doing that. But I think the regulatory framework infrastructures that we have is quite sufficient to pave the way there. But I think what is happening now is some of the companies or investors who wants to put their money into the nature-based solutions are still also waiting and see what is also happening at the global level, not only on the national level, right? So if you're following the development on the SBTI, the Science-Based Target Initiative, there's a huge debate on whether they should be allowing environmental certificate, or essentially an offset certificate, to submit against a company's Scope 3 emission target. And it has not been decided yet. And so there's a lot of, not confusion, but anticipations of what this global voluntary framework would say about using some of these new products. Like biodiversity credit is a lot less mature than the carbon credits market. But I think it's a matter of when, not whether it's coming or not. It's coming, but it's when, that's the key questions.
I think the idea of 1 hectare of land, that means not only the carbon, but also all of the animals in there, the plants, the people as well in there, that should be aligned. Yeah. Wow, that is fascinating. So I have a naughty question for both Pak Roni and Bu Maya. If the guilty ones, the company who are, deemed unsustainable, but they really want to try, but this is their bread and butter, let's say. What are the challenges, and how do you see them? How do you see their genuinity? We work with many companies as well. We see like the companies that are racing for ratings, Pak Roni, and the companies that are genuinely want to do some changes. So it's different actions. So what do you think of these companies who are guilty but want to be safe? How do you see them? Thank you. Please share. Maybe Pak Roni first, and then Bu Maya.
Yeah, interesting question, Dr. Jessica. From the point of view of stock exchange, Bu Maya also mentioned earlier, it is a process for our market. There are challenges that we are facing in the capital market. I think market maturity is also an issue here. It's a challenge that we are facing. If you compare to where the market in Europe or in the US, we haven't not reached that level yet. And I think this is all because most of our corporations still think ESG integration or sustainability initiative is still a burden for them. It's the cost instead of seeing it as a long-term benefits from being sustainable. And I think one of the other issue, I think, is how we can also attract more capital inflow into the capital market. And also, I think from the investor side, I think they're still focusing on profits. It's still a significant focus for our investors to gain profits from capital gain and dividends. But we are seeing more investors becoming more aware of the sustainable concerns into our investors. But I think for companies that wants to become sustainable but not yet there, I think it would be, I mean, some advice would be for these companies, they could also consider ESG integration in the company so they can set clear goals on what needs to be improved in terms of sustainability, and they can, monitor their progress and also report to the stakeholders like investors and the supply chains and also the consumers on how they are doing and get their feedback. So it's an area where a company can focus on and enhance and probably enhance their disclosure as well, the quality, because that's one of the key part that ESG rating like Sustainalytics, MSCI, and S&P Global looks at, the public ready publication. So I think that's one of the part that companies can also focus on.
Is there any, if I may ask follow up on that, is there any benefits or awards or incentive for the most progressive students, I would say? At schools we have like the most progressive students. You have advanced so much, from really, really bad to like, okay, not so bad anymore. Is there any plans to do that maybe in the future?
Yeah, it's a process, I guess, raising awareness and also educating the stakeholders, the listed companies in this case. I think it's one area where we focus. I think it's also interesting to hear that I think Pak Irfan also and Pak Andika mentioned TNFD and GHG accounting. And yeah, I think many of our listed companies are interested to know how to calculate their GHG emissions. So I think it's a process, and for us as a stock exchange, we look at this as an opportunity to educate them, to be more aware of what the investors are demanding from them in terms of sustainability.
Thank you, Pak. Bu Maya?
It is a naughty question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess for those guilty company, what you term them, it is a tough question, but I think each asset manager, as an investor, I think we have different standards. I can only take example for BNP Paribas Asset Management, if I may. So it's not, we have certain standards and certain criteria on which companies that we want to invest to. We don't exclude sectors totally, but what we do is that we apply what we call our responsible business conduct policy. So those are our minimum standards and expectation that we want the companies to actually meet before we actually decide to invest in them. So that's one part. The other part, we also apply our ESG criteria. So that's a quantitative and also qualitative measurement where we score the companies. So naughty companies maybe if they pass the RBC, they may have an ESG score, so they may have different scores between the E and the S and the G. So total, perhaps they have a lower score. But if they have a lower score and they pass the RBC, what we do, we engage with them in order for them to be able to increase their ESG score. So that's what we do. So we tell them what our expectations are in terms of the different parameters where they are lacking. And yet that's an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight, of course. So we don't punish them. So we try to work with them, actually.
Thank you so much. I think it's really for everyone in here or out there. There is hope. The doors are not closed for some investment. Thank you so much. I think we have to go to the live Q&A questions. Yeah, I would like to open questions from the audience. Yes.
Sure. Thank you so much for a great panel. My name's Robin Hicks. I'm from Eco Business. I'm a journalist for Eco Business. Actually, a question for Pak Ronnie. So how does IDX go about screening companies for greenwashing? Obviously, there's lots of claims about how green companies are. I just wondered what sort of work IDX is doing to tackle greenwashing in the sector.
Yeah, it's thank you. What's your name again? Sorry, Robin. Yeah, thank you, Robin, for the question. Yeah, it's an interesting question. In terms of greenwashing, we do get a lot of this question, but what I can tell you that in terms of the ESG issues that we monitor, we don't monitor ourselves. We partner with ESG rating providers such as Sustainalytics and also S&P Global, and I think that's also an area where we can focus moving forward in the future, how we can evaluate if the company is doing greenwashing or not. Because I think, in the OJK regulation as well, in their sustainability reporting, it's not required for them to have their sustainability reporting assurance by a external party. It's still voluntary. I mean, if the company wants to get an assurance for a external party, they can. If not, it's okay. I guess they can just submit this reporting to the regulators, to OJK and also to IDX. But I think, yeah, for now, it's an opportunity where we can focus moving forward. And currently, for IDX, we don't do the ESG rating ourselves, different from BNP Paribas as an asset manager. But we are working with partners like Sustainalytics and other ESG rating providers to monitor their ESG, ESG issues. Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
Pak Ronnie, do you have a whistleblowing system for those who might be reported for greenwashing, Pak?
Yes, we do. You can find it on the website. Yeah. There's a WBS system, yeah.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you so much for a great panel, Bapak Ibu sekalian. My name is Farah. I'm from Robertsbridge, Stonehaven. We are a sustainability consulting based in the UK, but we're recently in Indonesia. So yeah, we're expanding right now. Well, I was in banking before and also was attending like a lot of forums on sustainable finance, and I'm actually very interested in the development of the development of green bonds and like blue bonds and like the other thematic bonds that we have right now. Like, what do you think? Are we going in the right direction? Like, are we progressing fast enough to like meet the demands that are in the market for these thematic bonds? Thank you. Maybe Pak Roni or Ibu Maya.
Pak Ronnie, you have a lot of fans.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Farah, for the interesting question. Yeah, what I can tell you that I think there is demand for more funding from green bond issuance. I think just late last year in October 2023, OJK just released the revised version of the green bond regulation. So now more instruments are included in the regulation. It's including green sukuk, social sukuk and bonds, sustainability bond sukuk and sustainability linked bonds, yeah, SLB. And if we look at the data since 2018, yeah, we had our first green bonds. Yeah, it was only like 250 million rupiahs in value, but late in 2023 we have 14 issuances. I think it's around 12 green bond issuance and 2 social bond issuances. 1 social bond, 1 social sukuk. Yeah. So I think with that new regulation, it is an opportunity for companies to seek funding from fixed income instruments to fund their green projects or social projects. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we are running out of time. So I have a final questions for everyone as we conclude. If you could recommend one action, yeah, to move the needle in the nature and biodiversity space within your capacity. Okay. So what would be the most critical action that you think, should be the one, yeah, based on your within your capacity. Maybe I ask Bu Maya, ladies first, Bu. And then,
Okay. Um, if I can say, if I may represent the investor side, I think investors is key because they have the capital to be mobilized into sustainable solution. But before that happens, I think awareness should come first, and I think that's the key that we need to build awareness for the investors first, so that they can demand to the to the companies, and so the companies would be able to behave more sustainably. I think that's but it has to be now, yeah. It cannot wait.
thank you. Pak Andika?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to be done, right? But if I can pick one, as well as from investors or buyers of this nature-based solutions product, there's a lot of confusions in the market on what's the most appropriate price per hectares or per tons of carbon, say per hectares of remediations, right? Because there's not much transparency and uniform targets and indicators for this type of products. And so one thing that needs to be done for the industry as a whole is to come up with one alignment on what is needed to be delivered as a nature-based solution outcomes. Then we will, I think, will be converging into the pricing, because this is what is needed by the buyers and the investors. Should they pay $100 per hectare? Should they pay $1,000 per hectare? Because I know some projects in Colombia get $1,000 per hectare of outcomes, right? RSPO in Southeast Asia, they already have a set of requirements, and this is related to your naughty questions earlier about redeeming the sins, right? RSPO have set up a remediation and compensation procedure for companies who have deforested in the past but wants to get sustainability certified. They have to pay $100 per hectare for the next 25 years to conserve the forest. So that's the cost of redeeming the past sins, right? Yeah. But as you can see, there's a lot of variations between the $100 and the $1,000 per hectare. This creates a confusing signals to the buyers. Yeah, but yeah.
What is the indicator, yeah? What is the value in there? Okay, thank you. Pak Roni?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Pa Andika and Bu Maya as well. Yeah, there's a lot of things need to be done, and investor is also the key. So I think from the point of view of stock exchange, investors, could create the demand for companies to be more sustainable and consider ESG aspects of their organizations. So I think for investors, that's a good start. They can, look for company disclosure on how they are, how well they are managing their ESG issues. Look for the sustainable action plans and ESG performance and ESG rating. So I think that's a way of increasing the demand and attracting more capital inflow into sustainable investment. I think that's
Thank you,
another way.
Pak Irfan.
Yeah, we have been discussing about the platforms, concept, and everything, commitment. One thing that from our point of view as an NGO, how to make those concepts landed on the ground. That's one immediate action that challenge us also coming to us when we designing on what we talking about the nature-based solution, bankable nature solution. Now the immediate action is how to land all of those concepts on the ground, and then to measure the success with a clear timeline for 5 years maybe from now. What will happen? I think that's one thing that we should do. How to make all of this concept and commitment landed in the ground.
Thank you so much, Bapak Ibu. I think just to share as well, in Life Cycle Indonesia, we have this motto or a strategy, I would say: measure, manage, improve, and communicate. So whenever you're investing, you really know what's in there. It's not, something kucing dalam karung ya, it's really there, it's transparent, it's not misleading, and we know what to do, science-based decision making as well. Thank you very much, Bapak Ibu, for your very insightful information and also your participations, and I think we are going to take a photo, and let's give an applause.